this time, we will call to order Little Miami Local Schools regular meeting, October 23rd. Roll call, please. Still loading?
It's still loading the page.
Time out. Is that what it said?
It's still loading.
I love technology.
I'm not sure why. It's still loading. Hey Melinda, the launch isn't working.
Don't you love presentations?
I love
They always go so flawless. It's flawless.
I'm clicking on launch, it's not launching. Alright, there 12 rolled out to his technicals. Keep clicking it, it's not doing anything. It's like a blank screen. What I'm supposed to do, I click on that. Start
Oh, no, I got it. Come.
I'll get a different symbol this time. Apparently I have refresh. We're good.
Okay? All right. Roll call, please.
Let's see here. Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Nay? Absent. Mr. Cremines?
Here.
Ms. Grice? Here. Mr. Siebert?
Here. Okay, at this time, if everyone will stand, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Good job, gentlemen. Excellent job.
Just want to say that our color guard is going to be presenting colors at the Veterans Day celebration at the Countryside Y this year. So I think it's on November 9th. It's a great celebration I've been to a couple of years. So it'll be great.
Number 9.
I think it is, yeah. Yes, sure.
Okay. At this time, I need a motion to adopt the agenda you have in front of you.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'll move.
Mr. Cremines and Ms. Grice. Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, we need a motion to accept the reading of the minutes. All right, Mr.
Second.
Siebert. And Mr. Cremines. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes. Okay. This time, communication to visitors to the board. Mr. Fowler?
Good evening. I'd just like to give the board, I gave you a hard copy of an enrollment update. Even though Nancy is out of town, we still continue to enroll students. We're at 5,010 as of today, so that's a few more than last month when we met. Mainville Crossing, our renovation on our board office is proceeding, and it's projected to be complete at the end of October. You see on the board agenda tonight the furniture bid to furnish the space. That's up for your consideration and approval tonight. And then we finished our third day of
Bobby wanted a big lengthy PowerPoint presentation, but I
Thanks
saved
for not
everybody.
listening to it, Mark.
It's only a tree, right?
It's been a while, I think, since the advisory council gave any kind of update or direct communication to the board, so probably time to do that. Trying to keep this pretty simple, high-level stuff. I know information at the top of this that most everyone in the room knows, but I was picturing this like a work meeting and some sort of corny icebreaker to lead off the meeting to kill the formality. But interesting stat that we had in one of our recent DAC meetings. Last school year, 17-18, the first year the district has surpassed 1 million miles in its bus fleet. So school buses last school year drove just over 6,000 miles a day. As Greg just mentioned, enrollment is top 5,000 students, which I think from where we finished in May, we're up around 150-ish, and we should, by the time we get to the end of the school year, we'll continue that pace of growing 200 students year over year. Making advances in school security, conversation in the works on the district's second SRO, and the barricade, the door devices for in case of a lockdown are in the district and starting to get installed, if not already, soon. Looking at just some financial highlights, Terry presented information, I think, in our August BAC with some year-end numbers, pretty positive stuff. So revenue growth was really strong for the year. Year over year, revenue was up 5.3%, was higher than what Terry had in his projections. He largely attributed that to near 100% property tax collection at the county. And to give you a comparison, the previous 2 years, our revenue growth was 3.8 and 4.4%. So that was the best revenue growth we've seen in a few years. Then going into spending, we did have a large spending increase. Year over year, we were at 9%. Total spending is actually much higher than 9, but I've stripped out the cash purchase of the new admin building and what money we spent out of the budget for improvements there, so we get a true apples to apples spending comparison. So that 9% increase, a little higher than the previous 2 years. We had been at 7.8 and 7.2. Things that most impacted the spending last year: continued strong enrollment growth, Power Up program, and I believe we bought a set of books for the first time in forever at the high school is part of that. And we also had a contract negotiation. I think last year was the first year of a 2-year salary increase in our teacher employee base. So even if you do add in the building purchase and money we spend in rehab, we still had a small surplus last year overall. And then if we project in the 18-19, the year that we're in, if we see just kind of 3-year averages in our revenue growth and spending, we should still have a surplus this fiscal year. So we should get into 19-20 before we maybe go into a deficit. And from when we were speaking a couple years ago, some of the estimates we were using off of the 5-year forecast, we were planning. Terry makes a very conservative, low on the revenue end, high on the expense end. We usually outperform that 5-year forecast. So we're kind of kicking the can down the road to when we'll enter deficit spending, which is a good thing because it's we're prolonging having to go back to the voter and ask for new operating dollars. So just kind of some long-term financial recommendations and needs. As we're moving into this next phase, trying to create voter equity as much as we can in the coming year. We've been in the cycle where we were coming out of fiscal emergency, repairing the district, bringing things back, and we've had a surplus. We're going to go into the segment now, the part of the cycle where we'll have a deficit. We'll start chewing into our cash, and then not too long after we open buildings, we'll need to seek what will likely be a significant source of new operating capital, and we know how people will scrutinize everything that's happening from a spending standpoint when we do that. So we know that we're going to have to make the emergency levy, the renewal, likely make it continuing or permanent in 2020. Then depending on our annual budgets, not too long after that, we'll be seeking new revenues. And then in the midst of all this as well, depending on timing of the OFCC, we could be looking at phase 2 of the long-term master plan coming up. So when we think about the number of times in a short time frame we're going to go to the voter, anything that we can do, to be in their good graces will be a positive. That kind of leads into the next point. It's going to be really important in the short term that we execute well in all regards to the bond issue. basically that we're able to deliver to the voter what we had talked about and advertised in that plan and be on budget. And then just kind of asking, like my predecessor John did of you guys, just be very serious and thorough in any consideration of any initiative or item that we're looking at, that impacts spending. Not saying that we haven't, as a BAC, I think everyone's confident with the decisions that are being made and the progress in the district. But again, going into the coming years, entering deficit spending, we know that, as we get out there and start asking for monies in the future, people will be looking at anywhere that they can, to be critical of the district at that point. Then just some upcoming items, things that we can do to help. We're pending acceptance now into a new athletic conference. Something we've started talking about in our last meeting or two is how can we get involved and look at high school and junior high athletic facilities. How do we balance being competitive in the new conference but yet being fiscally responsible? What's that look like, from a funding source? Private funding versus tax dollars for any capital projects. This is something that is big for me, and I'm kind of passionate about getting involved in the bond issue and spending a lot of time in that, just learning how uninformed and apathetic the community at large is about, school spending and how things truly work. I would love for us to be able to create some sort of event that, we can bridge that gap a little bit with the community. I would love any ideas. I'm thinking along the lines of touch of trucks, cardboard regattas, those type of things. But something that could be the school, support Little Miami schools. Maybe there would be a scholarship component for a student, something like that. But where there would be, just getting a large segment of the community out to an annual event and just trying to, build a relationship between the two. I know easier said than done. It's something we talk about. Again, I know it's hard because you go public with a lot of things and the naysayers will come out. But, we're about to have some successes this year, finishing up the project at the admin building. Would like to see a piece when that's done that we can put out how many people we've moved in there, the classroom space that freed up, the rents that come in, so we can project to the taxpayer over a period of time that it will pay for itself. And then any positive updates that we can put out about school security as well, even the barricades. I think those things are impactful to voters right now because it's important in society at large. And then last is, I think we're a little underutilized. It feels like we talk about the same things a lot and, kind of sometimes just labor through the meeting. Anything that we can do to help you guys out, the things I've talked about, the bond plan execution, athletic facility upgrades, things that, ideas you guys have, we might be able to engage the community and, create a little involvement. I think we've got some sharp people and, that are willing to put in some time if you guys want to allocate some stuff to us.
Why don't you say that?
I've tried. I'm not a creative guy. It's not my strength. We kicked it around. From anyone. Someone that's maybe come from another district that knows of a type of event or something like that. Something that will get people out, and then we can have the message, have some captive people, and talk about, the schools.
I'll be bringing some stuff back. We want to run a statewide pilot community games.
Yeah.
What's about 20 districts.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to be a part of it. You guys have any questions or words of wisdom? Yeah.
I can say related to the athletic league that they will be in the district tomorrow doing a site visit. We have a presentation tomorrow morning for them and on the facilities and meeting with Keith and I think Melinda is a part of that meeting as well as high school coach.
Yeah, and in regards to the athletics, we spoke just a little bit in our last meeting. I know it's super early, but I think when we look at the next phase of a bond plan down the road being a high school and what it would take in the footprint of a high school for a new athletic facility, I think initially we like the idea more as an advisory council of investing in what we have and retaining that as our kind of varsity sports complex, especially with the new 10 acres that we have and room to expand into that a little bit would save us money down the road from having to do all that from scratch in the high school level.
Is that what Lebanon did?
Yeah, several schools locally have done it, so. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Excellent, excellent.
Thank you, Randy. That's all I have.
All right. community comments on agenda items.
Carol and Alton Jester.
Oh, I might have signed the wrong page. I thought I was signing in. The listener to,
Oh,
Joy.
okay.
Sorry. I thought it was a sign-in sheet.
All right, this time we will entertain the treasurer's reports and financial reports. Mr. Gonda?
Under letter D, item 1, ask for the board's approval of the monthly bank reconciliation, the financial summary of individual funds, the receipt ledger for general fund, and also 2 different budget reports.
Mr. Kameen?
I'll second.
Ms. Grice? Okay, you want to say anything here, Terry?
Oh, well, they're for month ending September, of course, and like I said, there's individual fund summaries for each individual fund. That's one of the files on there to take a look at so you can see where they are individually. Of course, the legal level control, they call it, what we control our budgets by, is at the fund level overall. Overall, cash balance is looking good right now.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Next, under item 2, ask for the board's approval of the October 2018 submission of the 5-year forecast.
Mr. Kameen? Mr. Siebert? Okay, would you like to walk through this, Mr. Gonda?
Absolutely.
Okay, you have one.
Very well. Okay, like I said, this is the. Is this better
Much better.
or worse? Okay, this is the October 2018 submission of our 5-year forecast. It is a working document, so everything in here is what we know as of actually yesterday, as far as revenue projections, expenditures, and so on. But first I want to start off with the forecast summary. This is just an actual small version of the 5-year itself, just broken out by expenditures, revenue, and cash balances. And a couple things I want to point out on here is if you look at the graph up above, the 22 and 23 fiscal years, you see the color red, or pink, I guess. And that is actually the balance that's part of the levy renewal that Mr. Souza was talking about. We have that renewal coming up and hopefully to turn it into a permanent levy. But that levy is crucial in its existence. It makes up This levy renewal right here is very crucial to the district because it makes up a significant amount of revenue of our operating fund. Roughly 10.6 million out of the 40-some million in revenue that comes in is made up by that emergency levy that we have. Also, I want to point out, as you can see, this orange line here is our cash balance going through there. And as you can see, and unfortunately, Mark, we're getting into deficit this year. We're looking at about a 1.6 million deficit from revenues to expenditures in fiscal year 19. However, as I go through this document, I'm expected to get a little smaller as the year goes on. It's just based on the information I have now. One other thing, if you could scroll up a little bit more to the bottom, see just a little further. There we go. Right here, I wanted to point out to everybody too that for fiscal year 18, the district's spending, and this is equivalent spending, which they call a weighted pupil spending, not just actual kids, was $88.05 per student. The state average is $93.56, so we're still well below the state average right now, and it's good because we like to look at that as what kind of bang for the dollar are we getting. So I always like to point that out. Very happy more below the state average because financially it means it's we're doing good things compared to the law of averages. Okay, this is a quick look at our revenues for the year. And you can see up here, the majority of our revenues are made by real estate sources. And that would make up your real estate, here taxes, and your property tax allocation, and actually your public utility, which is commercial taxes. So you can see the majority of your revenue is made up by property tax in theory. And then we have about 29.6% that's made up from the state funding. As you can also see, as you look down here, revenue growth is very stagnant. In the last 5 years, we had an average gain of 3.9%, but we're looking at a little bit less than a percent going forward over the next 5 years. With that being, it's just because a couple things are pretty stagnant. As real estate grows and valuations increase, you actually don't get more tax money because the dollar amounts are cent. Millage just actually happens to drop. And then state funding has been pretty pretty flat also. So we don't see a whole lot of growth in revenue. It does come up, as we discussed earlier, when we get collections. We did nearly 100% of property tax collections last year. I think it's a lot to do with people that wanted to pay all their taxes early on so they could still take the deduction for state and local taxes at the tax law change. So I don't think we'll see that quite this year. But we're looking at some stagnant growth going forward, and we expect the operating levy I was talking a little bit ago, the emergency one, actually falls out in 22. We'll talk about that here in a second as we go to the next page. Once again, you're looking here and you're seeing the green area. That's the renewal levy that comes out in 22. Our last year of collections on this levy is the first half of fiscal year 22, which is actually the fall of 2021. Like I said, this is very important. This makes up a significant amount of our revenue. As you can see, property taxes alone are, for fiscal year 19 are 55% of our overall revenue. Just scroll just a little bit. If you look at some of the information down here, we're actually in the middle of a reappraisal right now for 2018. And from my discussions with the county auditor, we're looking at between a 14 and 15% overall increase in valuation. And like I said, what does that mean? Well, we were at $891 million for 17, so our 18 number is going to be a little over $1 billion in valuation. There is some growth off that. We had some inside millage at 1.6 mils that money does go up. You get a little bit more money on that, but overall, it doesn't really increase your revenue very much. And once again, I was going to say that renewal levy in the green is extremely important because the majority of our revenue comes from property taxes. This is the public utility personal property. You can see once again the renewal levy affects it. This is on commercial property. It's been very consistent over the years, and it looks like we're going to maintain that consistency in the public utility personal property. The next one we can skip because it's income tax, and we do not have that. Okay, unrestricted grants and aid, fancy name to say for state funding. And as you can see, we've had a little bit of growth over the years. I expect this number to change here in the near future. ODE does not have their current year data in yet for funding, so that's why we're seeing a little bit of a drop right now from last year. So I think we'll be up around the 14, but I don't have good data or information at the moment to get that, but you can see slightly increasing over the years. A couple things I want to point out is our state share index, and this is the amount of money that we get per student from the state, and it's a percentage of this dollar right here, $6,020. So really, every school, you're supposed to get $6,020, but they come up with a state share index, and ours is a third. So we get $2,019 of the $6,000. So definitely not a fully funded system. But one thing you will notice, though, is our state share actually goes up a little bit as you look over the 5 years. And that's a good thing, actually, because we'll be getting a little more revenue from the state. But that's based on factors such as overall property valuation and median incomes, how they calculate the formula. But I just want to point that out, that it is going up, which is a good thing, but it's still relatively, you're not going to gain $6 million in 1 year or anything, so it's still relatively flat. Restricted grants and aid. We had 2 years of collection there, that's why that's so big, but pretty much is consistent overall. This is a career tech and catastrophic aid, which is dollars you can apply for from the state that are beyond the amount that you get for special education, providing the services. But these have remained flat in the past pretty much, and we expect them to remain flat going forward. Property tax allocation, once again, taxes, so it involves a renewal levy. And this actually goes in line with the general real estate property taxes. As you can see, pretty consistent overall. Makes up about 8.8% of our 19 revenue. Like I said, goes in correlation with property taxes in general. This is the 10%, the 2.5% in the homestead exemptions you may see on your property tax bills, and actually comes from the state and gets reimbursed back to the district, but should remain flat and go as property taxes go. All other is just what it says, all other. This includes investment interest, tuition from other schools, where we have, we're educating students and so on. This goes back and forth with tuition that comes in when you get kids placed in other areas and so on. We had a large amount of tuition that came in 18, about 730 some thousand, projecting about the same in 18 or 19 fiscal year. Going forward, I don't have a lot of data to say that this is going to continue, so we might go back closer to historical levels where we were before. It all depends on the number of students and where they're located and so on across the state. Total or other financing sources, we don't, these are just actually refunds of expenditures. We don't project to have any going forward. Okay, expenditures. Just want to take a look at this real quick. Our past 5-year average, and a lot of this has to do with this average being so high and things dropping down, is the expenditures we had in 18 that we won't have again, like the admin building and so on. We had about just under 6% in the past, but going forward, you can see that it's almost breaking even because of we don't have the expenditure. We have an increase in some expenses in 19, but we don't have the building purchase and so on. So you can see we're just about breaking even here, but going forward, you're actually looking at about, between these years, these last 4 years, you're looking at roughly a 4.8% average going forward. The 396 is kind of distorted a little bit from this 0.61, which was about breaking even with the year before, but like I said, that's because we had a big capital outlay expense. But overall, we're looking at, like I said, 3.96 including this year going forward, and everything pretty much to do with that is just our ever-increasing enrollment and our growth in the district. Our big dollar amounts are, of course, personnel services. This is salaries. This is 54.4% of the overall budget. This forecast includes the 2.5% base increase for 19. It actually has no base increases in 20, 21, 22, and 23, but it does include the step increases of 2.43% overall. This also includes some staffing. Of course, we had our staff from last year, and this current year in 19, where we added 11.5 certified, a couple classified, and 1.5 exempted. Going forward in 20, we're looking at 4 certified and a half exempted. 21, 6 certified, and in 22, 4, and then 2 more in 23. Now these are, I'd say, guesstimates at this point because you're so far out, we're not sure where enrollment. Enrollment pretty much drives all this, whether you need additional personnel or not. And if you have any questions, please stop me. So this is subject to change always, of course, but just based on historical trends of where we've been and where we're going, this is what we're projecting at this point for salaries. Next is benefits. This is mainly made up of medical insurance and retirement costs, your STRS and CSRS, which is your retirement. Goes along, of course, in correlation with the salaries. And this year we are looking at, in January of 19, so it's half of the school year, there's going to be a 2% increase in medical premiums, which I'm happy that's a low number again. Still based on some of these years in the past, we have projections of 10% on just the medical insurance going out through 20 to 23. Like I said, the things that are included are the STRS and CSRS, Medicare, and so on. But very happy about having a 2% increase on this. It's a lot of places don't have a premium increase that small. We've had zeros a couple years too, and like a 1%. So yes, that is. We're in the Southwest Ohio Educational Purchasing Consortium, the EPC as they call it, and it's been fantastic for us. It's done really well with our insurance premiums, kept them to a reasonable rate. Like I said, when we've had zeros, I think one year we actually had a -1 a few years ago because we were on a high deductible planner, but instead of getting 0, we actually saved 1%. So yeah, we've saved millions. I mean, literally millions since we've joined the EPC. That first year alone, we saved $3 million over the 5-year forecast. In the first year that we joined, I think back in 13, on the medical benefits. Next, if you go to purchase services, as you can see, it's trending down, but it's trending back up again. This includes utilities, repairs, tuition we pay to other schools, and that's what I want to focus on. Scroll up here a little bit. It's roughly 7% of our budget for this year. The big dollar value here, a percentage that you can really break out, is our open enrollment. We have open enrollment that comes into the district, which is roughly $149,000. This is where our open enrollment community school money has been going out over the years. And this is money that they take from our state funding right off the top. So right now we're looking at about just a little over 1.8 million. Well, I remember years ago this was 2.3 million. Still 1.8 is a lot, but it has remained fairly flat, actually dropping a little bit. In community school, it ticked up a little bit, 18, we're projecting this in 19 right now. But we continue to monitor this throughout the years. I look at our reports to see, because this is money, like I said, that they take right off the state funding off the top and we never see it. So out of the, say, the 13 million we're going to get from the state, they're taking almost 2 million right off the top to send it to other districts and other schools. But hopefully that'll remain flat and hopefully continue to go down. Next we have supplies and materials. We're talking like student supplies, teacher resources, maintenance supplies, fuel, you name it, about 4.5% of the budget in 19. As things get more expensive, of course, we just keep seeing an uptick in it. But luckily, we're not forecasting any enormous increases at all, even though we do have an aging bus fleet. But I don't see anything jump up. The biggest thing that jumped up here from 17 to 18 this past year was the Panther Power Up project on our online curriculum. That was in there, but that is forecasted throughout there too, so that's why you see that constant trend there. Next is capital outlay. These are items that have to have a useful life of 5 years or more. This is where we're talking buildings, buses, equipment, and so on. As you can see, we bought the administration building right here, and we're going to go back to more historical levels. We do not have in fiscal year 19 any bus purchases between now and the end of June projected, but in 20, 21, 22, and 23, I have 4 buses in there each year. So it's a total of 16 buses over those next 4 years that are actually already budgeted in there and projected in the forecast. We will have to monitor our bus situation, see how it goes throughout the year to see what we need and don't need and so on. Next is intergovernmental debt. We do not have any. That was just the money that we borrowed years ago from the state to stay afloat. And other objects, it's only 1% of the budget, and roughly this is just fees and dues we pay mainly when they collect your taxes. The property tax collections have fees and so on from the county auditor, and just other miscellaneous items. Like I said, it's just a hair less than 1% of the budget, and it's going to remain pretty flat overall. And then total other financing uses, we're not projecting anything at all. This was an advance we had back in 16. Aren't projecting at this point any new advances. And then the last page actually is the forecast. This is our historical information from last school year. And this is our information going forward. If you can scroll up just a little bit. There we go. Where's the last page? The amounts right here, if you look at the fund balance, I'm going across your cash fund balance at June 30, no levies. This is where we're going to be without any renewals. As you can see, we get out and we're not breaking even this year. Like I said, I think this is going to get a little smaller as we get through the year and get some better information from the state. Like Mark's talked about, we did, come to a little bit of a positive. This is revenues compared to, it's like a profit and loss in your income statement. This is a little difference between revenues and expenses. But we're starting to eat into our fund balance right here, and it's just something I wanted to point out. And this is before levies. Now, scroll just a little bit. There should be, There we go. As you see here, this is a levy renewal. As the way it's set up right now with the same dollar amount and everything. This would be a half a year of collections, and this is actually what your fund balance would be after that renewal in fiscal year 22 and then in fiscal year 23. So once again, you can see how important the renewal is just alone by itself, let alone additional revenues for the new buildings and everything that are coming. You go from a 7.2 negative to a little over 9 million positive. So very, very important. But like I said, the big thing I want to point out is, we are eating into this fund balance. As you can see it dropping and so on over the years, and that's just because of the revenue is just pretty much stagnant compared to expenses in their growth. But those are just the important things I want to point out. Does anyone have any questions on this? This is the last page.
Good job. Good job explaining it.
Oh, no.
I understand.
No, we just need to hopefully do that.
Like I said, any time that I get new information that's significant material, update this and send you out a new copy. I expect to see some, like I said, additional information from ODE coming soon on the state funding. And hopefully taxes will come in a little higher. We're going to see, I think, a little dip just because everyone paid them early last year to get that deduction. So I think that's why we saw that increase before. So I think we see a little drop now. But overall, I think we've got good projections. Like I said, this is a working document. This is everything you know of as of this moment. It could change next week, to be honest with you. But I think it's a good roadmap for where we're going and where we need to be.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Gonda, and thank you for showing how important the levies are and renewals. So, okay, at this time, no other questions. Roll call, please. Right ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Cremines,
Yes.
Mrs. Grice.
Yes.
Thank you. Next has two resolutions relating to our bond issuance. The first one is actually the authorization, the resolution to authorize the bonds not to exceed 64.6 million after the submission to the electors. So this is after the voting has occurred, and we're looking for the authorization to issue.
I'll move.
Okay, Ms. Grice? Mr. Cremines? Okay, any questions? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Cremines,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
The next one, Resolution 1813, this is actually another resolution relating to the bonds, and this is directing the county auditor to levy a tax outside of the 10 mil limitation.
I'll move.
Mr. Cremines? Okay. Mr. Siebert? See anything about that, Mr. Gonda?
Yeah, actually, when they say outside the 10 mil limitation, you can issue debt up to 10 mils of your valuation. And after that, you have to go beyond it, and of course, this is just authorizing you to go beyond the 10 mils.
No questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Cremines,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Next, I ask for the board's approval, the contracts as listed.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice?
Second.
Mr. Cremines? Would you like to cover those contracts, Mr. Gonda?
There's three. There's Solutions Community Counseling Recoveries for intervention services. We have a transportation agreement also, and then Toddler Time is actually for the last week program that is held here at the intermediate school.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Cremines.
Yes.
Next, I ask for the board's approval of the furniture package for Mainville Crossing.
I'll move.
Mr. Cremines? Mr. Siebert, seconds. Okay, roll call, please, or?
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Cremines,
Yes.
Ms. Grice.
Yes.
And last but not least, I ask for the board's approval of a donation.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice and Mr. Siebert.
This is a donation from Cameron Lohman of Purdue Foundation to purchase, it's like we had before, the two tower gardens, one for Mainville and one for Butlerville Primary. It's for the garden, the whole fall, actually.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Cremines,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Very, very, very nice. Those are, kids would really like them. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are excited about that too.
Yeah, man, you sure have.
Yeah, they're actually, they grow plants.
Oh, I know what they are, but.
Does it have the aquaponics underneath, or is it just a tank?
It's a 22-gallon pop. Yes.
Very nice. Okay, at this time, thank you very much, Mr. Gonda. We will entertain the superintendent's reports and recommendations. Mr. Power?
Thank you. I'd ask the board's approval for all items listed under number 1, personnel.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice?
I'll second.
Mr. Cremines? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Cremines,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the new Assistant Food Service Director. Lynette Petrie is here tonight. Come on up and shake the board members' hands, Lynette. I'd like to ask the board's approval for the limited contracts listed under item 2.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice? Mr. Siebert? Would you like to?
These are contracts for our ROTC instructors. These are framed in a manner, in a way that helps them to document what they need for their coming inspection in December. Don't want any write-ups.
All right, roll call, please.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cremins?
Yes.
I'd ask the board's approval for item number 3, an additional staff member for the treasurer's office, amending the FY19 staffing plan.
So moved.
Mr. Cremins?
I'll second.
Ms. Grice? Roll call, please.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cremins?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Thank you. Ask the board's approval for item 4, a job description for custodian.
I'll move.
Mr. Cremins? Would you second? Mr. Siebert seconds.
Mr. Siebert, you're next.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cremins?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
I would ask the board approval for item 5, the updated Business Advisory Council charter. It also lists an updated membership.
Mr. Siebert?
Second.
Mr. Cremins? Okay. I'm assuming we're still on the UAC?
It's normal house.
It's normal housekeeping?
Couple
Okay.
updates, a couple folks that left,
All right.
new faces.
Just want to make sure there. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cremins?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Would ask the board's approval for item 6, the approval of the establishment of a percussion ensemble as an unpaid club.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Ms. Grice and Mr. Cremins?
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And that is a club?
Yes.
All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cremins?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Would ask the board's approval for item 7, high school choir field trip to Nashville in March of 2019 at no cost to the board.
Mr. Siebert?
I'll second.
Ms. Grice? Roll call, please.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cremins?
Yes.
Would ask the board's approval for item 8, a plethora of board policy updates.
I have to be honest, I did not read all of this.
You did?
I did not.
All right, great start.
I did not.
Now you gotta be home then.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice?
I'll second.
Mr. Cremins? No, I agree. I did not. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cremins?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Power. Appreciate that. This time, under new business, we'll entertain the Warren County Career Center report.
And I have one this
And I'm
time.
going to say, I thought I seen
I don't need that.
Ms. Grice, or Grice, right ahead.
At our board meeting, we had our new staff, they were introduced to the board, and recognized at the reception. Also, graphic arts graduate Caitlin Evans and her mother, Tina Peregrine, were recognized by the board for connecting WCCC graphic arts program and instructor Howard Norris with the Cincinnati Veterans Hospital. rural farmland, we have, what, 68 acres that we, farmer farms for us. Mike Cummings is our legislative liaison, and he reported that the gubernatorial candidates held a meeting in September with students from across the state about agriculture. One of the things where we've noticed that in career tech places, agriculture is not as prevalent as it was, and Ohio is so agriculturally determined. Our whole state is agriculture mostly. So I think the schools are bringing agriculture back, FFA and all that. We had a blood drive, and students achieved 106% of their goals. They went over their goals. Cosmetology students attended a premier beauty class hair show. Aerospace Academy students hosted an area-wide aviation summit. There's a lot of things going on at the Career Center, and if you haven't had a chance to visit there, you really should. It's up and coming. And we've got a great superintendent. Rick Smith, our superintendent, reported on our enrollment and retention, and as we are here, growing, we are growing as a person. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Grice.
You're welcome.
Okay, our next board meeting is Tuesday, November 27th, 7 p.m. here at the intermediate school. I'm assuming we've had point one. Thank you all very much for your board reports. Those are very, very informative. We appreciate that. At this time, community comments on non-agenda items.
No one has signed up.
Thank you very much. At this time, I need a motion to move into executive session to consider the employment of a public employee or official, no action taken.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice? Mr. Siebert? Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much.